A European Music Guide. Chapter 1. Europe is the birthplace of classical, folk and modern music. European Music Info. Europe is a mixture of the old and the new, classical music, disco and current pop. Every country has its own ethnic, folk, pop and rock music. Eurovision is the big musical contest held every year with musicians from most coming to play their music. The young people party at Ibiza while Vienna holds the reputation as the classical music city. Every region has its own traditional folk genres. Spain has flamenco music. The Romanians have gypsy music. The Cossacks have their own unique dance, kicking their feet out while bent down, arms crossed. There are vibrant music scenes in big cities like Vienna, Paris, London, and Berlin. Europe has its own pop music. They have famous DJs like David Guetta. They play American music but they got their own hits. Classical music captivates audiences worldwide. A History of European Music, Part 1 at brusselsjournal.com/node/3992. The ancient Greeks used various musical instruments such as harps, horns, drums and cymbals. Aristides Quintilianus in the late 3rd century AD, created a treatise called De Musica, on music. Plato argued that education should stress gymnastics to discipline the body and music to discipline the mind. He would only allow certain types of music for limited purposes and asserted that musical conventions must not be changed, since lawlessness in art leads to anarchy. Aristotle said that music can be used for enjoyment as well as for education. To the Romans, music was a natural part of public ceremonies and entertainment. The Church deeply affected the development of European music. Some elements of Christian observances may derive from Jewish tradition, like the chanting of scripture and the singing of psalms from the Old Testament. Monks started chanting which lead to the now famous Gregorian chants. Christianity and the Renaissance helped open up music as a tool of entertainment, education, and prayer somewhat because singing and music in general leads to a sense of community and communal feeling as in a bunch of people singing in a choir. Music is seen as an instrument in a society going from savage to civilized, when they have music as a fine art. Music was taught at some of the universities which led to people experimenting, composing music and writing songs which started the modern music movement. According to A History of Western Society, 7th edition. Medieval churches stand as the most spectacular manifestations of medieval vitality and creativity. They built big elaborate then filled them up big ornate masses which had music in them. At one time, masses were sung in Latin. Music has an aesthetic force that people bond to. Originally, the music made them feel more religious but it gradually evolved where people were singing and dancing for fun. Europe is the birthplace of alcohol as far as I know, so they would drink, get a little tipsy then sing and dance. I grew up around Europeans and British people. They loved to drink alcohol, sing and dance. It's part of our culture. Those early Disney movies didn't hurt either. I remember one Disney movie about a bunch of country people dancing around. It was the barn dance scene in 7 Brides for 7 Brothers, 1954. I saw it when I was a kid in the 1960s. They had the art of dancing down in the 1950s before it degenerated into the go-go dancing of rock and roll. This is the mythical idea of what we descended from, strong people who love life. That's why we sing and dance because it's a higher part of life. It's part of the historic tradition of European people, singing and dancing. It's part of being human. The ETS probably don't dance. We got something they don't have. Many instruments might be involved in playing the melody. The Europeans developed music from simple melodies on or 2 instruments to great pieces of orchestra music. Bach, Mozart, and Beethoven took the idea of simple music, stacked the notes and melodies on each other to create the great harmonious music we have now. Wagner represents the end of classical Western music. A light-hearted non-academic article on the history of European music at bbc.co.uk/bitsized/topics/zw3bkhv/articles/zfm2p9q number sign zqk9q eq. Archaeologists have found musical instruments made from animal bones that are 60,000 years old. The history of Western European music can be divided into separate periods of time. Each period has its own musical styles, instruments, composers. They build on each other. People play around and explore music, which leads to a new period of music. Medieval music refers to a period between AD 800 and AD 1400. Much of the music created during this time was for religious purposes. The music would have one melody that was sung, often in Latin. The Renaissance period of music lasted from around 1400 to 1600. It was a time of great exploration in music. Composers started writing music that was to be enjoyed away from religious settings, such as music to be danced to. This was called secular music. Composers started making music for instruments such as the harpsichord, the violin, and the lute. Choral music or choir music continued to be popular. Music notation, writing music notes on a treble and bass clef, started during the Renaissance period. The Baroque period was between 1600 and 1750. The idea of an orchestra was born, with large groups of instruments being separated into families or sections and then playing together. Opera and concertos started during this period. Bach, Handel, and Vivaldi come from this period. The classical period covers music composed between 1750 and 1820. It includes composers such as Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven. The harpsichord was replaced with the piano. Orchestras grew bigger and more powerful. A type of music called a symphony became popular, which is a long piece of music for an orchestra split into 4 sections called movements. The Romantic period was roughly between 1780 and 1910. It was a time of freedom and passion. Composers and musicians started getting together to share their ideas. This is the heart of modern music. Some of the most famous composers of this time include Chopin, Brahms, and Tchaikovsky. It went right into the radio age, which opened music up. All of a sudden, radio stations needed musicians in the time before they created recording devices. Radio, the phonograph, and TV created the explosion of music we now take for granted. European pop artists of the 1980s at liveabout.com/top-European-pop-artists-of-the-80s-10s-10670. The European group probably started with ABBA. a-ha was probably the biggest European act in the 1980s with Take On Me. Alphaville came out with Forever Young. Tarzan Boy by Baltimora was an Italian group. Aqua came up in the 90s with Barbie Girl, followed by Ace of Base. There are lots of pop hits from Europe. Some traditional European music defined by UNESCO at euronews.com/culture/2022/05/18-unique-European-music-that-are-protected-by-UNESCO. Italy, opera singing. Inuit drum dancing, Greenland. Byzantine chant, Cyprus and Greece. Kaustinen folk music, Finland. Rebetiko, Greece, an old Greek musical tradition. Canto a tenore, Sardinia, a style of pastoral singing developed on the island. Uean piping, Ireland, playing Irish music on a particular type of bagpipe known as the uean. Fado, Portugal, incorporates poetry and music to create a sometimes sorrowful, melancholic, passionate melody. Chant of the Sibyl, Majorca, a religious song performed on the night of Christmas Eve in churches across Majorca. Music in Europe as a tourist at sophiessuitcase.com/music-in-Europe. There are concerts year-round with many festivals in the summer. Ibiza, the Spanish island, is party central for Europe with many discos during the summer months. Young people migrate there in the summer, then leave in the winter, kind of like Myrtle Beach in South Carolina, alive in the summer, a ghost town in the winter. Classical music and disco go side by side in Europe. They're freer than most Americans. A band like Genghis Khan can make it in Europe because they represent fun with the costumes and the simple songs, whereas in America, they're too cool for it. They would call it cheesy. Village People gets most of their business from Latin America. They only lasted a few years in America. In the UK, there are music festivals like Glastonbury or Reading and Leeds. Eurovision is technically a music competition, but it's really a music festival with a winner at the end. There are classical music concerts in England right alongside the many discos. Best destinations to go for music in Europe: Italy, Mina, Andrea Bocelli, Laura Pausini, and Adriano Celentano. England, Oasis, The Rolling Stones, Blur and Arctic Monkeys. Sweden, ABBA, Avicii, Agnes Carlsson, and Robin. Germany, Mozart, Rammstein, Kraftwerk, Johann Sebastian Bach and Ludwig van Beethoven. Spain, Julio Iglesias, Enrique Iglesias, and Alejandro Sanz. European music styles and genres at en.wikipedia.org/list_of_music_genres_and_styles. There are many styles of music, plus every country and local area has styles and their own musicians. The European part of this page is as follows. Balkan states. Balkan music. Balkan brass. Balkan folk music. Music of Albania. Music of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Sevdalinka. Music of Bulgaria. Music of Cyprus. Music of Greece. Music of Kosovo. Music of Montenegro. Music of North Macedonia. Music of Romania. Romani music. Manele. Gypsy music. Baltic states. Lithuanian folk music. Music of Estonia. Music of Latvia. Caucasus. Music of Armenia. Music of Azerbaijan. Music of Georgia, country. Central European states. Music of Austria. Viennese waltz. Yodeling. Music of Croatia. Music of the Czech Republic. Polka. Music of Germany. Music of Hungary. Music of Liechtenstein. Music of Poland. Polka. Music of Serbia. Music of Slovakia. Music of Slovenia. Music of Switzerland. Yodeling. Nordic/Scandinavian states. Nordic folk music. Music of Denmark. Danish traditional music. Music of Finland. Jenka. Rautalanka, Finnish surf rock. Music of Iceland. Music of Norway. Music of Sweden. Music of the Faroe Islands. Viking metal. Slavic states. Klezmer. Music of Belarus. Music of Moldova. Music of Russia. Music of Buryatia. Russian folk music. Music of Ukraine. Music of Yugoslavia. Western European. Music of Andorra. Music of Belgium. Belgian hardcore techno. Belgian hip-hop. Belgian jazz. Belgian rock. Music of France. French classical music. French electronic music. French folk music. Bal musette. Chanson réaliste. French hip-hop. French house. French jazz. French pop music. Music of Ireland. Celtic music. Music of Italy. Italian classical music. Italian folk music. Italian hip-hop. Italian jazz. Italian popular music. Music of smaller European countries. Music of Luxembourg. Music of Malta. Music of Monaco. Music of the Netherlands. Music of Portugal. Portuguese folk music. Chula. Desgarrada. Fado. Coimbra Fado. Pimba. Portuguese rock. Music of Spain. Spanish folk music. Chirigata. Copla. Cupel. Ensalada. Fandango. Flamenco. Alegrias, Bulerías, Faruca, Garadan, Rumba, Solia, Tango, Shintos, Zambra, Hoda, Muanira, Pasacalle, Paso Doble, Sardana, Segadilla, Sevillanas, Tonadilla, Zortzico. Spanish jazz, Spanish rock, music of the United Kingdom, Britpop, English folk music, music of Scotland, music of Wales. Articles on European music at the Wiki websites. en.wikipedia.org/list_of_European_folk_music_traditions. en.wikipedia.org/wiki/culture_of_Europe #music. en.wikipedia.org/wiki/category:music_of_Europe. en.wikipedia.org/wiki/category:european_music_genres. commons.wikimedia.org/wiki/category:music_of_Europe. commons.wikimedia.org/wiki/category:european_music_genres.